Most people think they're doing okay financially, they're not broke, but they're not safe either. Most people think they're doing okay financially. They're paying their bills, their card isn't maxed out, and they're still able to order takeout on a Friday night. From the outside, life looks stable, but stable isn't the same as safe, and that's the part almost nobody checks. We tend to measure financial health by how normal life feels. If nothing is on fire, we assume everything is fine. If the paycheck arrives and the lights stay on, we call it stability. But normal isn't the same as secure. Normal just means the system hasn't been tested yet. Most financial problems don't start with a crisis, they start with comfort. Life keeps moving, routines keep working, and because nothing dramatic happens, we assume the foundation must be solid. But a system can run smoothly for years and still be fragile underneath. Here's a simple question that cuts through the illusion. If you stopped working today, how long would your life keep running exactly as it is? Not how long you could survive by panicking, selling things, or borrowing. I mean, how long before stress shows up at your door? Most people don't know the answer, and that's the problem. This isn't a trick question. It's the kind of question that forces you to see your finances as a system instead of a routine. And once you see it that way, you stop guessing and start measuring because routines feel safe. Systems show you the truth. You don't have a money problem, you have a clarity problem. And once you fix that, everything else starts making sense. The reason people feel financially okay is simple. They track movement, not position. They know their paycheck, they know their rent, they know when their credit card bill is due, but they don't know where they actually stand. Think about how most people interact with money. It comes in, it goes out, and as long as nothing bounces, the system feels healthy. But that's like judging your health only by whether you collapse today. It ignores everything building underneath. Income creates the illusion of control because money keeps flowing in. As long as the flow continues, life feels normal. But flow isn't stability, flow is just motion. Stability is what happens when the flow stops. A lot of people aren't financially secure. They're financially busy, they're juggling payments, schedules, and due dates. As long as the juggling continues, it feels like progress. But juggling isn't building, it's maintaining, and maintaining doesn't protect you from surprises. Paying bills on time feels responsible. It doesn't automatically make you safer. Earning more feels like growth. If expenses rise with it, nothing changes. Motion isn't direction. You can have a decent salary, a nice apartment, and still be fragile. Fragility isn't about appearances, it's about margin. If everything you earn already has a destination before it arrives, you don't control your money. Your obligations do. Your paycheck isn't your plan. This isn't about being rich, it's about not being fragile. So let's make this practical. Everyone watching this has a number that defines their financial reality, whether they know it or not. I call it your survival number. This is the amount of money you need each year just to keep your life from getting worse. Not to grow, not to invest, not to improve anything, just to exist without sliding backward. To find it, you take your essential monthly expenses and multiply by 12. Housing, food, utilities, insurance, transportation, not streaming subscriptions, not weekend spending, just the stuff that keeps life running. If that number is $4,000 a month, your survival number is $48,000 a year. That's not your lifestyle number. That's your don't fall apart number. For many people, this calculation is surprisingly emotional. Some discover they actually need less than they thought, which brings relief. Others discover they need far more than expected, which brings urgency. Either way, the number removes illusion, and that's what makes it useful. Reality is uncomfortable. Guessing is worse. This idea isn't new. Financial planners have been talking about essential spending for decades, and even authors like Morgan Housel in The Psychology of Money stress that Knowing what you actually need is more powerful than chasing what you want. Needs define stability, wants define lifestyle. Most people have never calculated this. They think their salary defines their situation. It doesn't. Their survival number does. Money doesn't disappear. You spend it. And when you know where it goes, you start to see what your life actually costs. Let's add some context. The typical full-time American earns somewhere around $60,000 a year. That sounds decent. Not rich, not struggling, just average. But average income doesn't mean average security. It just means you're standing in the middle of the crowd. And the middle of the crowd is where most financial stress lives. A person earning $60,000 might still have zero savings, high fixed expenses, and debt payments that eat half their income before it even lands. From the outside, that person looks stable. From the inside, they're one broken appliance or medical bill away from scrambling. Many households experience this quiet pressure every month. The paycheck arrives already spoken for. Bills line up in advance, like the margin between income and obligation gets thinner over time, not wider. It's not dramatic enough to call a crisis, but it's constant enough to create stress. Being average isn't protection, it's just common, and common doesn't mean safe. Economists often talk about the difference between income and wealth, and that gap explains why two people earning the same salary can live completely different financial lives. One builds margin, the other builds obligations. Only one of them is actually getting safer over time. Most people assume income equals stability. It doesn't. Stability is what's left after the bills are done. What actually determines stability is how much of that income you control after life takes its share. Now let's talk about the other number almost nobody calculates, your freedom number. This is the amount you'd need invested so your money can support your life without a paycheck. Not luxury living, just your normal expenses covered by what your investments generate. There's a simple rule for estimating it. Take your annual expenses and multiply by 25. That's roughly the amount needed for your investments to sustain you long term. This approach comes from what's often called the 4% rule, a guideline studied by researchers like William Bengen. It isn't perfect and it isn't a promise, but it gives you a ballpark. And a ballpark beats a guess. So if your life costs $24,000 a year, your freedom number sits around $600,000 invested. That's the math, not motivation, math. For most people, seeing this number is uncomfortable. It creates a gap between where they are and where they assumed they were heading. But that gap isn't bad news. It's information. And information is what lets you make a plan. The real power of money isn't buying stuff, it's buying time. And nobody ever regrets having more time. This isn't exciting. That's why it works. When you combine your survival number and your freedom number, you start to see your real financial position. Some people are fragile, meaning any disruption pushes them into stress. Some are stable, meaning they can handle normal life, but aren't really progressing. A smaller group are builders, consistently creating space between income and spending. And a very small group are independent, where their money does the heavy lifting. Most viewers fall somewhere between fragile and stable, not because they're careless or irresponsible, but because nobody ever showed them how to measure this stuff properly. Schools don't teach it, jobs don't teach it, and most families just pass down habits, not strategies. We also live in a culture that rewards looking successful more than becoming secure. Social media shows lifestyle, not balance sheets. Promotions show income, not margin. So people learn to compare externally instead of measuring internally. Real financial security looks boring. It looks like consistency, restraint, and planning ahead. And because it doesn't look exciting, most people postpone it. Hope isn't a financial strategy. I've seen this play out hundreds of times. The people who face their numbers early win. The ones who avoid them stay stuck. I'm not judging you. I'm judging the decision to never check your numbers, because once you see them, you can change them. So here's what I want you to do today. Open your banking app and calculate your survival number, just the essentials, nothing fancy. Then estimate your freedom number using that simple multiplier. That's it. No spreadsheets, no complicated systems, no dramatic life overhaul, just clarity. Most people avoid this step because they think it'll feel overwhelming. In reality, it feels grounding. Numbers remove guesswork, and guesswork is where anxiety lives. When you know your numbers, decisions stop feeling emotional and start feeling strategic. You don't need motivation, you need visibility. Clarity creates calm, and calm creates better decisions. Now, if you're realizing you're closer to fragile than you thought, don't panic. That's actually where change begins. In the next video, I'll show you the first move people make to go from fragile to stable. It's not flashy and it's not complicated, but it works every time when done consistently. Click the video on your screen and discover exactly what to do in the first 24 hours after receiving your paycheck to start changing your financial life immediately. Do the boring stuff. It works.